So every month on my Instagram, I do a Q&A. So I let people ask questions on whatever they want, and then I answer them over on my blog. And so for February, I got a lot of questions about finances and money. So I wanted to kind of make a couple of videos about finances, about money, to just kind of share my thoughts and my approach to finances, especially living a debt-free life. So that's what this video is going to be about. I have never, ever owed anyone any money whatsoever. Like I don't even think that I've even borrowed like $10 from my brothers. I've never owed anyone anything. I have no student loans. I have no credit card debt. I don't have a mortgage, although I will talk a little bit later in the video about how I probably will have a mortgage, hopefully by like this time next year. But I have never owed anyone anything. And so in this video, I'm going to be sharing some of the strategies that I've used to cultivate a debt-free life. I was set up for success as a child, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But I've also made a lot of really smart and intentional financial decisions to cultivate a debt-free lifestyle. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, keep on watching. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any more videos. A little bit more about me. So I am 30 years old. I have 3 degrees and I'm married and I have a beautiful 1-year-old son, and I have zero debt. So that's really freeing and really liberating, and I actually have a really good relationship with money, and in a lot of ways I think that was cultivated in me as I was a kid, my parents. So shout outs to them, like they did a really good job, I think, really instilling financial knowledge and awareness in me from a young age, and I recognize that a lot of people don't have that. And so if you are not in a current situation where you are financially independent and free, then maybe there are some tips in this video that might inspire you, encourage you, give you some ideas on how you can get there. So this is a more of an educational type video than I normally do. So first I want to talk about different kinds of credit. Then I want to quickly talk about the main credit that shows up in our everyday lives, especially people who are, millennials, people generally like 18 to 45. And then lastly, I'm gonna share some tips and suggestions for how to get extra money so that you can actually pay off some of your debt or get money to cover a large expense that you have coming up so that you don't have to take on debt. Now, I am not a financial advisor, I'm not a CPA, I don't have an educational background in finance, but I do have a lived experience of living this life, and so that's the perspective that I'm going to be sharing from. Before we can talk about how to reduce debt or overcome debt, we have to really understand what debt is. So if we think about debt on an axis, there are 2 main axes of debt. On one axis is secured or unsecured. So this means whether there is collateral or whether there is an asset attached to the debt. For example, a mortgage is an example of a secured debt because the house that you take the mortgage out to get is attached to the loan that you receive, and if you don't pay it back, the bank or your mortgage issuer can repossess that house. Same thing with cars. So those are secured debts. Unsecured debt doesn't have an asset tied to it. So this is credit card debt, is student loan debt. Like someone can't take away your degree if you don't pay back your student loans. Like a gym membership, things that don't have a collateral, don't have a tangible asset tied to them. So whether the debt is secured or unsecured is on one axis. On the other axis is whether it is a revolving debt or a non-revolving debt. A revolving debt just means that you can continually, usually on a monthly basis, incur said debt or incur additional debt. A credit card bill is a great example of this because you can charge things to your credit card today, and then next month you can charge additional things to your credit card even if you haven't finished paying off the things from the previous month, although you shouldn't. I'll get into that a little bit later. But you can continue to incur debt on a revolving basis. So that's revolving debt. And usually for revolving debt, there's a maximum limit. So for credit cards, some credit cards have a $5,000 limit, a $25,000 limit, whatever the limit is, there's usually a limit to revolving debt. Now, non-revolving debt is more static. So you're not regularly incurring the debt, or it's not happening on a cycle. It's kind of just like a one-time thing. And so student debt falls under that category, a mortgage falls under that category, a car loan, because you're not incurring that debt repeatedly. So that's revolving and non-revolving. To summarize, we have secured and unsecured debt and revolving and non-revolving debt. And you really want to think about what kind of debt you have and which categories do they fall under. And that could be helpful information as you think about how to approach your journey to becoming debt-free. Now that we know like the technical terms for debt, I want to turn to the 4 main types of debt that most people have. So number 1 are student loans. 2 are mortgages, 3 car loans, and then 4 is credit card debt. So I'm going to talk about student loans. I'm not going to talk too much about mortgages and car loans. I'm going to touch on those a little bit. And then I'm going to end by talking about credit card debt, which I think is a huge issue for a lot of people, and also I think one of the easiest things to resolve. So let's get started. Okay, so student loan debt. I have a separate video that I made talking about how I got 3 degrees. I forgot the exact calculation of the value of all of my degrees. I think it was close to $500,000, but got all of those degrees with 0 debt. So in that video, I include strategies for all types of education, for college, for graduate school, master's programs, and then for doctoral programs. My experience is with colleges and doctoral programs because I went straight into a doctoral program from undergrad. The tips can be applied across all education. My husband does have some student loans that he can pay off, and he just doesn't want to pay off right now. It's like, I don't know, like $3,000. And so we can definitely pay it off. He just, whatever, it's not our problem. I mean, like low-key is, whatever. If you are 15, 16, 17, watching this video and you're kind of thinking about, okay, well, I don't want to take out student loans for school, the easiest way to not have to take out loans for school is to get good grades. I don't know, I feel like that this is just not something that is said enough. I feel like we talk about good grades in terms of, oh, you know, you get good grades and you can go to a good college. Aside from whatever college you go to, if you get good grades, you will be more eligible for scholarships and for fellowships and for grants. A lot of scholarships for college students require a certain GPA, require like a 3.0 and sometimes a 3.5. But that's the easiest way to get free money, is to just do well in school. And so I want to encourage you, if you are young and you are thinking about, okay, well, how do I get money for school? Just, you know, buckle down and do the work, get extra help, and try your best to do well in school, because that can definitely get you more money. Now, aside from that, another thing I didn't really talk about, especially for graduate education, is tuition remission programs. So we actually talk a lot about this in Cohort Sisters, which is the nonprofit organization that I run that supports Black women pursuing doctoral degrees. One way to hack getting your graduate education funded is to get a job at a university. You get a job at a university, they often have tuition remission packages for university staff, and then basically your school is paying for you to go to school, and you can often do your degree within that university as well. So that's definitely something to consider. It's definitely something to look into. Universities aren't the only institutions that have tuition remission programs. A lot of corporate employers also offer tuition remission and employee tuition benefits. So definitely look into those. And if you know that you want to go to school, and you also are thinking about switching your job, you know, look into working somewhere that will cover some part of your tuition. And if you happen to be interested in pursuing doctoral programs, please, 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 to the best of your ability, find a fully funded PhD program. There is no reason to pay for a doctoral degree out of pocket. If you are a doctoral student, you are literally doing labor for the school. You are a research assistant, you are a teaching assistant, you are, you know, helping faculty with their work. You're doing labor. You need to be paid for that work. So if you are kind of struggling to do that, you don't really know where to start, and you happen to be a Black woman, definitely check out Cohort Sisters, because we are here to support and encourage you along the way. So next I want to talk about mortgages and car loans. Mortgages are often considered a good debt, meaning that one, it's connected to an asset that has value and oftentimes appreciates in value, and you might be able to recoup your money after a couple of years if you decide to sell the house, although, you know, with the housing market, that's never a guarantee. Right now, we don't have a mortgage, and I think when I said earlier that I don't know if I'll always be debt-free, home ownership is something that I dream about. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be homeowners. That's definitely one of my goals for 2021, mid-2022 for sure. You know, we would probably have to take out a mortgage for wherever we would end up living, but it is important when you are going to take out a mortgage. And I do know about mortgages because my parents were real estate appraisers for a really, really long time. So I grew up working with them and, you know, kind of seeing how the business develops. But it's always really important to make sure that the house that you're buying is valued properly, and to also make sure that your loan is within your means. And I think banks do a pretty decent job of, you know, not giving you a loan that you can't afford. But just because a bank gives you, say, a $400,000 loan, that doesn't mean that you should go out and get a $400,000 house, right? It means that you should maybe look into a $250,000 house or a $300,000 house, because then you'll have some extra wiggle room for the additional cost that no one ever thinks about with home ownership. Oh my gosh, the amount of costs that come up with home ownership. So anyway, I just want to throw that little sprinkle in there. Mom and dad, if you're watching, I hope you're proud of me. I won't talk about like how to reduce your mortgage costs or how to buy a house, you know, without taking out a mortgage. It's not really my area of expertise. Car loans are interesting because it's a secured loan and that it is tied to an asset. It's rare for your car to be valued more than you ever bought it for. So it's a depreciating asset. It loses value over time. If you're leasing a car and you are leasing it for 36 months, if you look at the cost that you've paid in that 36 months, if you're paying, let's do some quick math. If you're paying $250 a month times 36 months, that's what, $9,000 over 3 years. You've just spent $9,000 on a car over 3 years when you could have maybe likely bought a car that was, 5 years older than the model that you have for maybe $8,000 or even less, or maybe not 5 years, maybe a 10-year-old car for a little less. And so for us, the car that we drive, we don't lease it. We bought a used car outright. And I personally think that that is a bit smarter financial decision in terms of if you have the money and if you know that you're gonna use it long-term. Right? If you don't always live in the same place, if you might up and move countries like I did in a couple of years, and maybe leasing makes more sense for you because then you won't have to bring out a huge chunk of money all at one time. But I feel like, don't try to impress people with your car. Buy a car that runs, a car that gets you to where you need to go, a car that is safe. You can definitely get a car with, less than $5,000, which in the long run, I think is a lot better than paying, $250, $350 on a car every single month for 3 years. But not owning it at the end of the day, having to send it back, right? Okay, so those are my thoughts on car loans. And the last thing I want to talk about is credit card debt, which is the biggest and most easily resolved type of debt. But I think people get into credit card debt so easily because credit card companies make it so easy for you to get a credit card. Not all credit cards are easy to get, but it's fairly easy to open up a credit card and max it out and just open up a new credit card. And I think some people see that as a way to finance their life, and I want to encourage you to kind of think about credit cards in a different way. So one of the biggest financial lessons that my parents taught me, and one that I cherish and will cherish forever and will pass this along to my son, is to treat credit cards like cash. I have always done this from the very first credit card that they gave me when I was a freshman in college, and they said, here's this card, you can only buy books, and if we see anything besides books on it, you're gonna be in trouble, which I did, by the way, honor. And it's to treat credit cards like cash, which means that if you have $500 in the bank and you have a credit card, you cannot buy something for $600 because you don't have the money to pay it off. That's it. It's as simple as that. And so that's how I have always used my credit cards. I have an American Express card for personal use, and at the end of every month, I pay off the entire balance. I'm not paying the minimum. I'm not paying the statement balance. I literally pay every single thing that is owed on that card at the end of the month when the bill is due. I think that has really, really, really set me up for financial success because I just never owe anyone money. And interest rates, credit card interest rates, after the intro 0% APR that they get you when you sign up, the interest rates on credit cards are insane. They're 25%. So insane, and they compound. You buy some lipstick from Sephora for $25 and then you end up paying $60 for it by the time you pay it off because of interest. So yeah, please, if you can, treat your credit cards like cash. Only buy things that you have the money for. So how do you know when you have the money for something? So I'm not the kind of person who's gonna tell you okay, only use cash for 30 days and blah, 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 or use a spreadsheet, write down all your expenses. That is so 2010. We are living in a modern digital era. There are so many different apps and tools to manage your finances for free. Two of my favorite ones are Mint and Wave. They have slightly different functions. I think Wave is a little bit more robust with their reporting, while Mint I think is better for budgeting. So a common thing with both of them is that you log in, you connect every single one of your accounts, you enter in your loans, you enter in your cash on hand if you have any cash on hand, and you just get a full scope of all of the money that you have, including assets, and all of the debt that you have. So everything that you owe. I'm sure there are tons of Mint tutorials on YouTube, so you can go and check it out more. But if you are thinking about, okay, well, how do I start from scratch? Like, how do I set a budget? Mint is really helpful because one, you can see all of your assets in one place, but then two, you can go in manually and say, hey, I want to set this budget for XYZ reason. So I started using Wave for my businesses, and I think Wave just does a better job of like showing graphically like how your spending has been. So I won't talk that much about Wave, but again, you can go into Wave, you can search YouTube for Wave tutorials and figure out how it might be helpful for your personal finances. All right, a second tip that I have about credit card debt specifically and credit card usage specifically is to be intentional when you sign up for a credit card. So I feel like sometimes when we sign up for credit cards, we're just like, oh, like I want the XYZ card because like this is a cool card. No, do your research on the best cards for different reasons. So two main things that I'll talk about are travel rewards cards and sign up bonuses. There are also tons of places online where you can like search for credit cards like Nerd Wallet and the Points Guy. Yikes, I'm blanking on all of these things. But if you Google credit card comparison, like the stuff will come up. But for travel rewards, if you like to travel, I know that we're not doing that much travel in this day and age, but if you like to travel or if you travel regularly for the work that you do, then it's really important to get a travel rewards card. We have a travel rewards card right now that gives us 5 times the points on all travel that's booked through, we have an Amex card, so that's booked through Amex. So that means that, for example, we are flying to the US shortly, and we are going to book that travel with Amex so that instead of getting, like say the flight's $1,000, instead of getting 1,000 points for the flight, if we booked it elsewhere, we would get 5,000 points. And so when you rack up points, then you get rewards. So when you get to, I don't know, 100,000 points, you can now get a free flight. And like, you don't have to do anything to get it. So travel rewards cards, if you fly frequently, if you travel frequently, if you stay in hotels, even if you rent cars, like they can be really helpful. I know that I'm not maximizing our travel card. There's so many different ways to like shift points from here to here so that it has more value. Like I'm not like that, that strategic about it, but definitely something to look out for. And then secondly is sign up bonuses. When we were planning our wedding, we knew that we had a lot of expenses coming up. So we decided we didn't need a new credit card, but we decided to get a new credit card for the sign up bonuses. So there are cards that will give you like 50,000 extra points if you spend, I don't know, $5,000 in the first 3 months or something. So if you know that you have a big expense coming up and you are already using credit cards responsibly, then it makes sense to why not get bonus points by getting a new credit card? So that's something that I just also wanted to throw out there. That's like another hack that I use with credit cards is to, when we know we have a huge expense coming up, I would say huge expense being like, we know we're gonna spend $5,000 in like 3 months, or even like maybe 10,000 in 3 months. In that case, we'll think about opening up a new credit card and looking for signing up bonuses and et cetera, et cetera. The number one thing is really to understand what is happening with your money. And so if you kind of Google budget for 25-year-old woman, you'll find budgets. You'll find a website that'll tell you to spend, $400, $450 on rent and, $200 on groceries and whatnot. But I think it's more important to budget based off of your current budget. What that means is understanding the current state of your finances. And how to do that is by tracking your finances, tracking your transactions, going into somewhere like Mint or Wave and importing all of your accounts and then categorizing your expenses. If you're starting from scratch, I would recommend categorizing like 2 or 3 months if you can. So we're now in March, so add in your accounts and then manually hand categorize every single thing that you spent on in January and February. And then that'll give you a good picture of, on average, like how much you spend on food and how much you spend on Netflix and how much you spend on the gym membership that you haven't used since the pandemic started, and et cetera, et cetera. But you have to start from where you're working from. And I think that this is a mistake that people make because they will be like, okay, well, I can only spend $150 on groceries this month. But in reality, they actually spend $300 on groceries. And so when they try to spend $150, they go over the $150 and they're like, okay, well, screw it, my budget, it didn't work. And then, they just throw it all away and then they aren't held accountable. So you have to know what you're working from first. Step one, know where you're starting from. Know your existing expenses, know the state of those existing expenses before you go and start working on a budget. First tip. Tip number 2 is finding extra income. One great thing about the digital era, especially the post-pandemic era, is that a lot of work is now done online. A lot of work is now done virtually. So there are so many different ways you can make money online. If you know how to type things, like, you can work. There are so many data entry jobs. There are social media and management jobs. There are virtual assistant jobs. There are transcription jobs. And some of these jobs, obviously require you to, have some social proof, to have some reviews, but you can get a Fiverr account. You can ask your friend, oh, hey girl, do you need help with XYZ? Have her book you through Fiverr, have her write a review for you, and then bam, you have a review on your transcription services. So, and then you can continue to offer that service. The 2 hours that you spend watching TV every day, if you're spending that time, you can use that time to be making an extra $20. And if you make an extra $20, say it's just $10 an hour, 2 hours a day, $20 times 5 days, that's $100 right there. That's $400 in the month. Bam, you have just earned $400 extra by doing things that you already can do really easily. You can also there are tons of free courses online. You can learn how to do things. You can get certifications in various online and digital skills. And so those are really, really easy ways to make extra money. Another way to make extra money is to do service-based jobs. So things like delivering Postmates, doing Uber delivery, becoming an Uber driver or a Lyft driver. Those are service-based jobs that are pretty easy to get started with if you have a mode of transportation. I have a friend who at one point, wanted some extra cash, slash was bored and so started driving for Lyft and was making extra money that way. If you are a student, my number 1 hack for getting extra money in school, whether in university or in graduate school, is to do research studies. Jonathan and I did so many research studies, especially our senior year. We started dating our senior year. So our senior year, we wanted to go to Jamaica for spring break. And so I forgot how much money we needed for the trip, but we both every 3 times a week, we were at the psych lab clicking buttons, doing some random study, and we would leave with $15, with $20. Sometimes it'd be incentive-based rewards. We would leave with $50. I don't know how feasible those are, now with universities, some of them being closed and whatnot, but research studies at universities are such an easy way to make money. It's like free money because you're literally clicking. You get free money. Or you're watching some video and answering a survey and you get free money. So you can do those things. And there are also online surveys actually outside of the school setting that have cash-based incentives. So you can check those out. Lastly, quick way to make money is to sell stuff that you already have. I feel like we always forget this. You can always sell things that you have. Right now, I know that I needed $3,000. I have things that I could sell. I would be sad to part with, but I have things that I could sell and get that money really quickly if I desperately needed it in a jam. So you don't necessarily have to have big ticket items, but if you sell, a sweatshirt that you have that is from some concert that's vintage or whatever, you sell that for $15, and then you sell, your cool sneakers for another $50, and et cetera, et cetera. Yes, you're giving up things temporarily, but first of all, you're not going anywhere right now, so nobody's seeing your outfits. But that's just another really quick way to get some extra cash, especially if you need it in a jam, rather than opening up a credit card. Just think about how you can sell a couple of things. The last thing is that one of our biggest expenses, I know I said last thing, one of our biggest expenses is always accommodation, it's housing. So something that I did when we were getting married is I felt like this was the greatest hack. One of my 2 really great wedding budget hacks. But one was that I lived in a studio apartment at the time. My rent was $14.95 a month, which is insane for a studio anyway. But I decided that and my parents didn't live too far. They lived an hour and a half away. So what I did is I put my apartment up on Airbnb, again, pre-pandemic, but I put my apartment up on Airbnb. And then whenever someone would book, I would go stay with my parents. Now, you don't necessarily need to live near your family in order to do this. You can have a friend and say, hey, can I crash on your couch, 2 weekends a month? And then book out your place for those 2 weekends. Or if you have an extra room, you can do, have someone come in for room sharing or whatever. But splitting, like reducing the cost of your housing is such a huge way to save money, especially if you live in an overpriced or highly priced environment. So those are my tips for earning extra income, whether you need to pay off some debt or whether you are trying to save up for a larger expense. I didn't really touch on savings and stocks and investments right now. I feel like that's, those are like larger financial videos, but I just wanted to touch quickly on, my approach to debt, how I've been living debt-free, the strategies that I've used to cover like really large expenses. I always only buy things that I know that I have the money for. If I don't have the money for, I will work extra jobs in order to get that money. I can pay off the credit card bill when it's due. I use credit cards wisely. I use credit cards that have sign-up bonuses. I use credit cards that have travel reward points so I can then convert those into things later. I have been really strategic about doing extra work. I didn't talk about this actually, but when I was in grad school, the ways that I made money in grad school, because listen, the $30,000 stipend that I was getting was not cutting it for life in New York for me. So I did hair for some time. I did Senegalese twists for about 6 months out of my apartment. I worked part-time in an after-school program. I TA'd classes. At one time I was TAing 2 different classes at 2 different universities. I was a research assistant. I did graphic design for some time. That was fun. Through my blog, I ran a natural hair course. So I offered teaching services online. What else did I do? I blogged, so I did influencer marketing. I think that was, and then I Airbnb'd. Yeah. So those are the main ways that I earned income in graduate school to supplement my life and my lifestyle. All right, y'all, so thank you so much for watching this video. I should not have done an arm workout today because holding this camera is killing my arms. Woo! Let me switch and see if the left side is better. Ooh, the left side's a bit better. Anyway, if you learned something from this video, if it has inspired you to think a little bit more strategically or a little bit differently about your approach to finances, your approach to credit card debt, how you approach, earning extra money or paying off some of your debt, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. If you are uncomfortable with money and you don't like talking about it, also let me know. I feel like it's also important to kind of just start from scratch and work our way up. So if you guys have any more money related questions or any questions whatsoever, you know how to reach me. Drop them down below in the comments, or you can always DM me on Instagram. Thanks so much guys for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.